And the next term on there is Royal Society of London, Royal Academy of Sciences. Just know that these are two things. This is good if you're going to write an essay on this. And so therefore, if the essay is about politics and science of some sort or absolutism, these are really good examples, right? These are examples where the government is going to create scientific bodies. And why is the government financing science? We can say for two reasons. Science will lead to advancements, right? Scientific knowledge about the movement of things means better guns to shoot things, right? And so there's this idea that science will lead to advancement. And this incredible optimism that comes with science. This goes back to Bacon, who is so optimistic about the possibilities of science and using observation to actually verify truth. And then the second reason why they're going to be financing science is because scientific knowledge will reflect the glory of the regime, of that country. So it will reflect the glory of the country if you've got sort of this great scientific breakthroughs happening there. And so we see leaders around Europe will begin to see advantages to financing science. And so our examples of that are the Royal Society of London and the Royal Academy of Sciences in Paris. Okay, now historical scholarship, one of the things that we see is that the inductive method means you need evidence to assert truth. Okay, and this doesn't just mean for science, but this will expand to other areas. And for example, the law, there will be more demands for evidence, and so that means at the end of witchcraft and changes when it comes to, courts. Like, how do you know someone murdered someone? You need a body, right? You can't just assert that they were murdered without having some evidence of a murder. And of course, this has an effect on history as well, the study of history. So we really see the birth of modern history. Let me say that again. We see the birth of history at this point in history. Okay, like the birth of history as something that will be studied, in which evidence will be gathered to prove things are true about the past. And so what we'll see is different historians will begin to become experts in languages in order to read historic manuscripts, in order to read coins and to collect other primary documents from different time periods, in order to understand what actually happened. Before this, history is a story of tales and legends, and many of these people, like Bayle, are skeptical that a lot of the things that people say happened actually even happened. And so historians are going to be trying to actually see what is true. And they're going to be gathering evidence and therefore becoming experts in very specific things, reading certain languages, understanding coins or other things. And also we'll see the beginning of chronology, the study of basically trying to put everything in order. And everything on the same thing, so that what's happening in Africa or in these areas will be put in the same chronological sort of pattern as what's happening elsewhere. Okay, now when it comes to the Bible, one other thing about history, when looking at ancient sources, there is an acknowledgement that those sources can be biased. And so this is a scrutiny of historical sources comes about. Right? Remember, this is that Cartesian sort of doubt, that skepticism from Bayle. And so we know humans are gullible. We know things can be exaggerated. So when we're reading a source, even if this thing said it happened, we don't actually know if it did. So we need to make sure we gather enough evidence. And so there's a scrutiny of historical sources. And this is later, by the 17th century, late in the 17th century, and then of course into the Enlightenment, this is extended to the Bible as well. Okay, people are going to scrutinize the Bible and look at it just like any other historical source. And so say, well, maybe this is not perfect. Maybe this is not, the Word of God. And maybe there's exaggerations. And in fact, what we see is there are errors in the Bible, mistranslations between different Bibles, meaning there's different understandings of what is true based on these translations, or other things like that, like contradictory statements within the Bible. And so basically the demand for evidence and the scrutinizing of evidence means that there will now be scrutinizing of Christian sources and other religions as well. And those other religions, for example, we can note Baruch Spinoza, right? A Dutch Jew who rejects miracles, he rejects revelation, he rejects basically this idea that there's a God that walks through and helps people out and is listening to your prayers. Instead, Spinoza argues that's all superstition. And for Spinoza, God is everything in this world, and that's it. So we are all part of God, and this world is part of God, but God is not some supernatural force out there, outside of this world, interfering with it. Okay? So this is known as the idea of pantheism. And his theology of pantheism, this philosophy, is not as important as the key thing, which is that he's basically denying any miracles, any interference of God in this world. And so he'll be regarded as sort of an atheist and rejected, and his books burned. He's, of course, kicked out of his synagogue because he rejects the Torah and the revelation of the Old Testament.